diversity, their successful record of searches and placing superintendents in urban schools, and their competitive cost proposal. With respect to the selection of the search firm, the independent investigation concluded that the evidence shows the subcommittee developed and applied evaluation criteria consistent with the RFP and grounded in its recommendation on JG Consulting's experience, expertise, and fees. Furthermore, the investigator identified no irregularities in the process. There were no red flags concerning JG Consulting's eligibility, performance history, or professional integrity, and no information suggesting that the firm would misguide or mislead the board. To the contrary, the information provided by JG Consulting was consistent with the RFP's requirements and supported the subcommittee's recommendation. The next section of the independent investigator's report related to the vetting process as represented to the board by JG Consulting. Throughout this process, JG Consulting emphasized that they would thoroughly vet all candidates before presenting them to the board and explained that some candidates would not be presented to the board for consideration. When doing so, JG Consulting talked about their behind the curtain check and indicated that they had done some really heavy checking and assured the board that they had done their homework. When discussing their vetting of candidates, JG Consulting stated that they were very comfortable with Dr. Roberts, but stated he had one blemish. This was a citation that he was issued by a park ranger when he was hunting. According to JG Consulting, Roberts was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And they did not disclose any other negative information to the board about Roberts. As stated in the independent investigation report, based upon their conversation with JG Consulting throughout the search process, board members generally understood that that JG Consulting would fully vet all of the candidates put in front of DMPS board and that the candidates would exceed the board's expectations. The board members relied upon and trusted JG Consulting throughout the entire search process, especially as it related to the vetting of each candidate. JG Consulting expressed confidence that candidates, particularly Dr. Roberts, were fully vetted aside from a single disclosed blemish. In light of these formal commitments, repeated assurances, and the firm's asserted expertise and processes, the independent investigator found the board's reliance on JG Consulting's vetting and candidate representations was reasonable. The independent investigation report then turns to the search process itself. Each board member met one-on-one with representatives of JG Consulting to provide their individual input with each board member, or that each board member wanted in a superintendent. This process assisted in the creation of what we called a leadership profile, which guided the board's search process. The final leadership profile contained the board's goals and guardrails and specific qualities the board was looking for in a candidate. The specific qualities included a proven leader with a track record of improving the ability to increase teacher and staff retention, and an advocate for the DMPS community, and a fiscally savvy leader. During this investigation, several of the board members highlighted the need for the next superintendent to be visible and accessible to the community because the community had provided feedback on this particular issue. Of the entire applicant pool, JG Consulting presented 7 candidates with 2 categories to the board. Tier 1 candidates were JG Consulting's top recommendations, and Tier 2 candidates were individuals that JG Consulting found intriguing, but did not meet JG Consulting's muster to get into their top tier. Tier 1 consisted of 5 candidates, including Roberts. Tier 2 consisted of 2 individuals. JG Consulting provided each board member with an iPad so that they could electronically review the resume packets for the Tier 1 candidates on the iPad. For Roberts, the resume packet contained his cover letter, his resume with no ABD noted under Morgan State University, and a document called Letters of Reference for Dr. Ian A. Roberts, which was actually just a list of references. Transcripts from Georgetown University, Coppin State University, Morgan State University, St. John's University, Trident University, and JG Consulting's verification form, which was completed by Dr. Roberts. The board spent approximately 90 minutes reviewing the resume packets for the 5 Tier 1 candidates. The board then watched all 5 videos of the Tier 1 candidates, as well as the videos for the 2 Tier 2 candidates. During the final hour of the meeting, board members identified who they wanted to bring in for an in-person interview. Among others, this included former Superintendent Roberts. Prior to the first round of in-person interviews, a subcommittee of the board drafted interview questions and a scoring rubric to use during the first round of interviews. The board interviewed 5 candidates over the course of March 31st and April 1st of 2023. Each interview was approximately 1 hour long. Following the last interview on April 1st, the board deliberated for approximately 4 hours. The majority of the board members agreed to bring back 3 candidates, including Roberts, for a second in-person interview. However, one of the candidates dropped out of the process, and the board only interviewed 2 candidates during the second round. For the second round of interviews, the board created 8 questions to each candidate. The board also created 2 specific questions for each candidate. The interview questions were also matched with a scoring rubric. Each second round interview lasted approximately 2 hours. It also included dinner with each candidate's spouse. The board met on April 13th to deliberate. Based upon the interviews, the majority of the board members agreed that Roberts was the lead candidate. Roberts also scored highest under the scoring rubric. Even though Roberts was the lead candidate, the board wanted to get some more specific information from Roberts related to student outcomes in other districts. The board then sent a follow-up questions to Roberts and held a third interview with him virtually on April 22nd, 2023. After the third interview on April 22nd, 2023, the board deliberated for approximately 75 minutes, and the majority of the board agreed that they should begin contract negotiations with Roberts. Another issue came to light related to the fact that the former superintendent claimed to have had a doctorate from Morgan State University, when in fact he did not. As the independent investigator found, the board was presented with slightly different resumes on different dates at different stages in the hiring process by JG Consulting and Dr. Roberts, neither of whom pointed out the subtle distinction between these documents. With respect to the resumes submitted to the board by JG Consulting and former Superintendent Roberts, the independent investigator found the evidence shows that JG Consulting provided the board with an incorrect version of Roberts' resume, the one that did not note ABD under Morgan State University. On 2 separate occasions prior to Roberts' first interview, first, JG Consulting electronically provided the board with the incorrect version of the resume on February 28th, 2023, during the board's initial screening of the candidates. Second, the board was provided an electronic access to the same incorrect resume on March 1st, 2023. For Roberts' first in-person interview, Roberts provided the board with a corrected hard copy of his resume with ABD noted under Morgan State University. This subtle change was not pointed out by Roberts or JG Consulting and was not caught by any of the board members. After his hire, JG Consulting provided the district with a resume that did not have ABD notation for the Morgan State University. This version was provided by JG Consulting to be used to respond to an open records request, which then indicated was a truncated and cleaned up version of his resume. meaning that typographical and grammatical errors were fixed. JG Consulting did not indicate there were any substantive differences from prior resumes submitted. Additionally, although the background check report compiled by a third-party background check company hired by JG Consulting mentioned variances between information provided by Roberts and information reported by Morgan State University, the independent investigator found that the report reflected this information in a manner favorable to Roberts. With respect to the background check conducted prior to Superintendent Roberts' hire, the independent investigator found that the DMPS board did not know there were any immigration issues related to Roberts or that he was not authorized to work in the United States at the time he was hired or prior to his arrest on September 26, 2025. For the reasons discussed above, DMPS reasonably relied, upon JG Consulting, who stated they were a registered agent with E-Verify to fully vet Roberts and all other candidates. The independent investigator further stated that while E-Verify may have spotted an issue with Roberts' employment authorization in 2023, it is unknown whether it actually would have. It is also unknown whether JG Consulting used the E-Verify as part of its vetting process of Roberts, despite its representation to the DMPS board that it was a registered agent of E-Verify. Ultimately, JG Consulting did not identify any immigration issues related to Roberts for the DMPS board. In addition, the DMPS board did not become aware of immigration issues surrounding Roberts until his arrest on September 26, 2025, and the days that followed thereafter. Roberts never made the board aware of his 2024 deportation order or that he was involved in immigration proceedings prior to his arrest. If the DMPS board had conducted a background check on Roberts during his employment, the background check would not have revealed these immigration issues to the board because they did not result in a criminal charge until after his arrest. The independent investigator also found that the background check performed by the third-party firm did not identify any of the criminal charges or convictions identified on the Department of Homeland Security's press release from October 3rd, 2025, except for the Pennsylvania gun citation, of which the board was already made aware of by JG Consulting. Although the independent investigation report found that the board conducted a reasonable and thorough search that resulted in the board's decision to hire former Superintendent Roberts, we understand and share the feelings of anger, betrayal felt by many following his arrest. Superintendent Roberts admitted that he lied to the board and through us, to our students, our families, our employees, our entire community, betraying the trust placed in him by the state of Iowa and the entire DMPS community. We are deeply sorry for the pain that this has caused. And in addition to our efforts to be open and transparent throughout this entire process, we are firmly committed to taking proactive steps with the goal of preventing something like this from happening ever again. To that end, DMPS can share that we are in the process of registering for E-Verify. Although it is not a foolproof system, we believe that it is an important step in preventing similar issues in the future. Second, the district is undertaking a comprehensive review of all of its hiring and onboarding practices for all positions and will identify specific deliverables to improve consistency and compliance across the district. Third, although the board does not have specific plans to initiate a superintendent search at this time, we have certainly learned lessons from our last search and will inform that we will use to inform any future search. At a minimum, we will require any search firm or professional used by the board to agreed in the contract with the board to confirm that any candidate submitted to the board is legally eligible to work in the United States, to verify and submit to the board proof of verification of all employment, degrees, credentials, awards, and other material qualifications claimed by the candidate from the entity or institution listed, and to conduct an executive level background check that obtains the maximum amount of reportable information about the candidate. Thank you.
Thank you. I will start. I think it is important to rebuild trust. And with that, my first question, it's a yes or no question. At DMPS right now, currently, are there any illegal aliens employed?
I'm not aware of anybody that is unauthorized to work in Des Moines Public Schools right now.
You're not aware.
I'm not aware of anybody that is not authorized to work in.
Are you taking steps to verify that?
We have
Not
actually,
moving forward, but currently.
we actually are registered with E-Verify now. We are also in the process of an I-9 audit from the federal government. And so because of that, it's not something I can speak to specifically today, but we are in the process of working with the federal agency in an I-9 audit.
Do you intend to run your employees through this system, your current employees?
We will continue to operate with the federal government and engage in any requirements that they have of us to make sure that we are compliant.
Members of the committee. Representative Bradley.
Thank you for being here. Seems to me, hearing this and reading this, that JG Consulting did not do their due diligence. And that Ian Roberts, he collected a salary under false pretenses. Are you guys doing anything to get your money back? Are you going to sue your consulting firm? Are you trying to go after Ian Roberts's assets? And if not, why not?
Currently, we have gone into litigation against JG Consulting. We have not yet explored the option of litigation against our previous superintendent.
Chair recognizes Representative Bain.
Okay, my main concern is if there's no responsibility taken and we just start to point to other entities, what's from keeping this from happening again?
I guess I can jump in on that one. There are several steps that we've taken since September 26th. The first is we reached out to the state auditor's office for a re-audit. And so the state auditor is currently in the process of re-auditing financial transactions, contracts, conflicts of interest that were processed by the former superintendent. That's the first step that we took. We've also got our own internal auditor as well as a separate audit committee made up of business professionals that are looking at hiring practices in Des Moines Public Schools as well as compensation practices. The third step there, I think, to continue to be transparent is with the November 4th passing of the Reimagine Education Bond, we established an oversight committee made up of business leaders and community leaders with fiscal expertise to continue to audit to make sure that our expenditures are aligned with that of the stated bond language. The fourth aspect I guess I would point to is in November, our school board adopted a new policy manual that gives the board greater oversight into the day-to-day operations of the district. So that will be done at the board table in public forums.
Additional efforts from the Board of Education, do you feel like their involvement in this? I mean, again, as this kind of the circular pointing from one entity to the next, how do you feel their involvement is in this issue?
All I can tell you is that in terms of the Board of Education, that we have is the State Department that actually reached out to us on September 26th that evening and just asked for verification of the former superintendent's eligibility to work. We complied immediately, completely with that particular request and confirmed at that point in time with the State Department that the superintendent did complete an I-9. His portion did claim that he was a U.S. citizen, and he did provide those documents that substantiated that for him. That's been the extent of our State Department.
And we can't speak to the BOE's process that they use to give the previous superintendent their license. However, we do know that he was able to cross through the current vetting or the previous vetting process that was in place. So, you know, we're as surprised as everyone else is in that, and we are looking forward to continued collaboration and conversation around or with the department to improve that process.
Chair recognizes Representative Hayes.
So you are sitting in a room of elected officials, and around this table, if we are lucky, we have treasurers that help us with our campaign and ethics reports, right? We have pretty strict rules when it comes to that. And we are well aware that no matter who helps us with that, that ultimately falls on us. That is our responsibility that our ethics reports are accurate, precise, legitimate. So I want to go back to your hiring practices and why you chose JD Consulting. First of all, can you repeat your number 2 and what you're going to change regarding comprehensive review?
The district is undertaking a comprehensive review of its hiring and onboarding process for all positions and will identify specific deliverables to improve consistency and compliance across the district.
Specific deliverables. That's the word I want to focus on. So it appears that some DEI practices helped you decide on how you hired the consulting firm, correct?
We were looking for a search firm who had experience hiring individuals that served a population like Des Moines. So we wanted a search firm that had experience with large urban school districts.
Well, in your report here, 2 of the 8 specifically state demonstrated commitment to diversity and equity. And again, you hired the company because they have minority owned. So specific to that those kinds of words, right? So my question is, when you do that review and you look at your hiring practices, those specific deliverables, will you still consider those in your moving forward in your hiring?
When we hired Superintendent Roberts, he was hired because we believed that at the time he was the right person for the position and that he was the right person to serve the students and the community of Des Moines. And we did rely on JG Consulting, the advice of a highly regarded search firm to help us reach that decision. I cannot speak for what the future board will do in their hiring processes. I can speak for where we're at right now as a board, and we will engage in hiring individuals based on their merit and their qualifications.
I appreciate that. As elected officials, we take responsibility for what we do, and we appreciate that the school board take responsibility for the decisions that they have made, because ultimately it does fall on the school board members and hiring and firing superintendents. Thank you for the.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Shipley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Would you mind turning off one of those microphones? Some feedback.
Certainly.
Well, thank you for coming. I think we can all recognize this as an unprecedented event, and so your willingness to be open and honest give us an opportunity to pause and reflect and hopefully move forward. First question, I guess. So you mentioned, we heard about Morgan State, all but dissertation. Do we believe now he did get a doctorate from Trident International University?
I have no reason to believe otherwise.
So what has the board done to verify that?
I believe the independent investigator tried to call Trident University. They did not respond to our inquiry or the investigator's inquiry to verify that, but they've not given us reason.
So you called Trident International University and they just said, hey, we don't really interested in talking to you.
The independent investigator did, yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, so do we refer to him as Dr. Roberts then, or?
I refer to him as former Superintendent Roberts.
Fair enough. Is it fair to say there's holes in the criminal background check process here? I mean, I guess just kind of, if it was unlawful possession of a weapon, does that typically trigger a red flag if you're hiring another position, or I guess, yeah.
There, if you'll allow me, in the report, there's some timing. The background check, that occurred, there's various different levels of background checks that can be, you can engage in. And one level of background check only goes back 7 years. There's other background checks that go back.
So let me ask you like this. So what's the difference between the background check that JG Consulting performed for you versus the background check I mean, my understanding is if anyone visits the school, you submit them to a background check. Are you allowing people who had weapons charges years recently into the school, or what is the process for background checks typically, and how does that differ from what happened in JG Consulting?
Yeah, we do background checks, and typically, yes, if there's a possession of a weapon, there's absolutely some restrictions regarding who can actually enter into our school facilities and engage with children. So yes, there's a number of particular infractions or laws that were broken that we would guard against.
So normally, if I was trying to visit the school for whatever reason, if I had this on my record, you wouldn't even let me in, but Superintendent Roberts has it on his record, you hire him.
We were aware, the board was aware at the time of the hiring of the citation relating to the possession of the loaded firearm in his vehicle. It was our understanding that he pled guilty to that charge and paid a small fine. The former superintendent portrayed himself as being a law-abiding citizen, engaging in his Second Amendment rights. And as a sportsman and a hunter, based on the information provided at the time by JG Consulting and the former superintendent, we did not believe that the citation disqualified him from being a superintendent at that time. As it apparently did not result in his termination from his prior superintendent position in Pennsylvania, nor did it prevent him from obtaining his superintendent's license here in Iowa.
Now, while Ian Roberts was superintendent, the board adopted a policy to loosen up some of the previous criminal requirements in terms of hiring. I think I saw that reported in the news. Does that ring a bell?
We did not, no.
Okay. Did the school district ever authorize Ian Roberts to carry a firearm on campus?
No.
Is it a violation of district policy to carry a firearm in a vehicle, like allegedly, or can you update the committee on what exactly happened with the firearm and the arrest? My understanding is Ian Roberts was apprehended and there was a weapon with him, a fixed blade hunting knife, as well as a handgun. Am I correct in that
That is what's been reported.
You can't corroborate those reports?
Well, I can tell you that we didn't do the investigation. We did not search the vehicle. We read the same reports that you did, and those were the charges that he's had for him. So yes.
But normally, I mean, that would be a violation of district policy, what he was, doing, right?
That is correct.
Do you have any personnel on campus that carry firearms that you've authorized to do so?
We do not have any personnel that carry firearms.
Has there ever this come up before? I mean, again, I'm very sympathetic with the hunting sportsman argument. I guess what I'm trying to get at is people who carry typically, I have a hard time imagining this is the only time he was in possession of a weapon while on the job. And I believe Iowa code considers that a felony. So I guess, did this ever come up before? Did anyone have any knowledge? Did Ian Roberts mention anything about his military background? Did that come up at all in the hiring, or was it known that he'd be possessing of weapons at all?
We've not known of anything prior to September 26th. We were made aware of that with the reports the same as the public was.
In the aftermath of this, there's a lot of motions. Did any members of the public or the board, did they make any specific complaint about the presence of a weapon on campus or on Ian Roberts?
No.
Right? Nobody seemed to care about that detail so much, right? There were more in the other drama involved, is my recollection. Is that fair to say?
Well, I can't tell you what other folks were considering important and what they were focusing in on. We were not made aware that he was carrying a weapon until it was reported by the public, like everybody else.
Okay. It's interesting that, again, I would reason to believe based on this that the former superintendent likely was committing a felony every time he was at work if he had a weapon on his person. Maybe if there's consensus on that, that's not a big deal. Maybe the committee does need to take a look at 724 4B and change that. But I'll let the other committee ask some more questions, but I really appreciate your time in exploring these issues with us.
Thank you, Representative. I just want to confirm that we were not aware that he had a weapon, and it is not permitted on Des Moines Public Schools for anybody to carry a weapon at this time. I can confirm that.
Mr. Chick, I have one last question. Did the school district have any interaction with the federal law enforcement, ICE, during this process?
We did not have any interaction with ICE until the Monday following his arrest. And it was September 30th that DHS showed up at our offices and provided us with the documentation that then led the board to take action.
So as far from your perspective, the federal law enforcement and the apprehension of Ian Roberts, they handled themselves professionally, unprofessionally? Do you have any perspective into that?
I do not.
Okay. Does the board offer any reaction? So it's just curious. I know it's not completely overlap, but I believe the teachers union recently had guidance saying they are against any immigration enforcement on schools. Now, I think my understanding is this when he was in transit, maybe from school to school. Do you have any reaction to that position, whether or not immigration enforcement is justified in an instance like this? I mean, should they have waited until the weekend to apprehend him, or do you have any comment on that?
No, I don't have any comment or perspective on, how ICE or other officials conduct their business. I can confirm that I'm not aware of any ICE authorized action on Des Moines Public Schools properties.
Okay. Well, so at least in the immediate aftermath, there was a lot of jumping up and down that this was a historic injustice. And then I think after his resume fell apart, kind of the public sympathy dissipated. So at least from what you understood from the kind of neutral outlook, that this was not some sort of historic injustice, that this was something that law enforcement more or less needed to do to enforce the laws of our country.
We were made aware of all of this information on September 30th. When DHS provided us with documentation that was reported out in the news in prior days after his detainment, but before DHS arrived.
Chair recognizes Representative Bowden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for being here today. You said that you requested student outcomes from his previous employment. What does that mean? How do you gauge that?
We, as a board, are very focused on improving our student outcomes, improving our students' ability to thrive and to be successful post-graduation. And so we wanted to have data around previous Superintendent Roberts' ability to improve our students' performance.
So you requested that data and some information on it.
Yes.
So here's my disappointment. You requested the data on outcomes and you received written documentation on those outcomes, but you had knowledge that there was a citation of firearms, citation. But it's my understanding you didn't ask for that citation. You didn't ask for that record. You didn't ask to review that record to see it tangibly in your hands. Is that correct?
I do not recall. We discussed the citation in length as a board. I do not recall if we had the physical copy of the citation at that time. It was discussed in length, not only as a board, but with JG Consulting to understand what occurred, to understand the response from previous Superintendent Roberts. But I apologize, I do not I do not recall if we had the physical citation.
I would hope that that would be in his personnel record and that you guys could find that out if you guys asked for it and had it obtained. Because I think that that's one of the important takeaways for me is that trusting a third party with something that important, if it is important, you could have just called the other school and said, was this guy great? And they could have said yes. And that would have been good enough for student outcomes as well. But you requested the data and followed the data, but you didn't request the data from what I'm hearing for sure, you're not certain that you requested that data on that citation. And I think that that's the board's due diligence, especially moving forward. I'm just a little disappointed on that. And then the second question I have, and then I'll be done. You also talked about the resume process, and you said that there was a third-party background check. Was that during the process of the interviewing or later, after you discovered that this had happened?
So our interviews spanned several weeks, and it was over the course of well over a month, if I'm not mistaken. And so it was during the course of that time. So I believe it was between the first round of interviews so those occurred on March 31st and April 1st, and the second round of interviews, which occurred towards the end of April, is when
Thank you.
that occurred.
Because you stated that there was a variance, that that third party had found a variance in his resume information, but that it was in favor of former Superintendent Roberts.
Yes.
I have to say that if moving forward, I would like to see that the board, if somebody finds a variance, that the board does their homework themselves. That you pull that information, that you find out what that variance is, and that we don't assume that just because it's favorable on his side and they wrote the review on his side, what is that variance, and is there more that we have to track? Because as Representative Hayes said, I take the responsibility for my elected space. I can hire whoever I want to help me, but I take that responsibility, and I expect the board to take that responsibility moving forward. It's very cumbersome, I realize, to do this type of interview, but to rely on a third party and then shield ourselves from it is not what the public expects us to do. Thank you.
Thank you. I will say that the background check did not produce any concerns with the doctoral distinction from Trident University. And having a doctoral degree was not a requirement to be superintendent at the time that we hired Ian Roberts. But thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Fett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for being here. I want to go back to 2023 and just talk a little bit about the decision-making process that the board had after having resume information from the consulting firm. You stated that there was a citation for a gun charge. Can you restate exactly what that charge was that the board was, the blip on the resume that the consulting firm indicated to you?
Yes. I want to get it exactly right, so please allow me a moment. The citation to Roberts was when Roberts was hunting and he had put his loaded gun in the back of his car. According to JG Consulting, Roberts was in the wrong place at the wrong time. So he had the park ranger issued a citation to Roberts when Roberts was hunting and had put the loaded gun in the back of his car. So he had a loaded gun in the back of his vehicle, not while he was operating it.
Okay, and so the decision from the board was to accept that as acceptable and move past that and still hire him, correct?
Correct.
Was after his hiring, did the board change their policy and hiring practices to not disqualify applicants if they have a charge on their record?
No.
There was no change in board policy after 2023, after his hiring.
Roberts, previous Superintendent Roberts had discussed the possibility of that particular change in process. It did not, that particular item did not require any sort of board approval, but he did not approve it. We did not approve it. I'm sorry. We did not approve it. The previous superintendent did discuss with us a policy that would change exactly what you've identified, but we did not approve it.
So what is your current policy now for applicants and background checks and criminal charges?
I'd have to follow up with you on the specifics of that. It's pretty extensive. We do conduct background checks for all applicants and potential employees before they are sent to the board for approval for hire. But in terms of very specifics, what do you look for? There's a number of things that would prohibit an individual from being employed by the school district.
But you can't answer the question right now if your board policy states currently if an applicant has a criminal charge on their record, they could still be hired with the district.
Typically, no, they cannot be. But again, I would like to go back and look at just to double check and make sure length of time, things like that. But typically, no, you cannot have that and be employed.
Thank you. I'd like to have that information follow up. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So earlier we discussed the basically the hiring practices moving forward of employees, but I kind of want to back that up, back the train up. So you guys developed a scoring matrix in order to hire firms that go out and look. Your third highest scoring metric is a commitment to DEI. So is the plan still to have a commitment to DEI scoring piece on the rubric when hiring a firm to look at applicants?
We will certainly follow the law around hiring practices and continue to comply with both state and federal law regarding that. Know that we were looking for a firm that had experience placing superintendents in districts that looked like Des Moines Public Schools, that have served districts like Des Moines Public Schools. Our district looks different than many districts across the state of Iowa.
So due to the recent legislation that we passed in regards to DEI offices and things like that, will that piece still be on your rubric when looking at the firms, the search firms?
I cannot speak to what the future board will do, but I can assure you that we will fully comply with the law as it is written.
Okay, so you have provided a scoring matrix to us, obviously, after the fact. Will you be able to provide a scoring matrix to us once you develop it prior to hiring a new search firm?
Again, I can't speak to what the future board will do, but I believe that the board has an appetite for a very open, transparent process moving forward.
Okay, well, I just kind of want to put it on the record that we would like to see that scoring matrix when used to hire the search firms. So DMPS is now on board with E-Verify, right? You guys have that in place. So is it your plan to use E-Verify independently of the search firm when doing your next hire? So as a double measure or a double check?
We
Or will
will,
you just rely on whatever the search firm uses?
yes, we will be using E-Verify in addition to any outside verification.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chair recognizes Representative Henderson.
Appreciate that question. Actually, Representative Stone kind of took my questions, but I do have one more. And that is this, in the scoring matrix, and then in the recommendations that were given for hiring that firm, JG Consulting, I find very little in there, if anything, that has to do with educational quality. And so my question is, why is that not in there? Or if it is, perhaps I'm overreading it someplace. And then, and I think you've already answered questions that I had specifically to DEI, because that seems to me is somewhat different than any of the other rather objective standards that you have.
This particular scoring matrix was in regards to hiring the search firm and their ability to recruit and provide qualified candidates. We had a different scoring matrix that was utilized for the superintendents themselves that very much had a focus on their ability to provide quality education and improve student outcomes. So our focus with the search firm was more so the ability to provide us with high quality candidates, whereas the superintendents were scored on their educational ability and background.
Okay, but it occurs to me that when you're choosing a search firm that's going to be selecting a candidate for a particular position, that the search firm should be well educated, at least on what the candidates are coming in for. And so that was my question on that. In other words, it doesn't see, that you could have, I think you probably could use pretty much that same matrix for hiring a president of a bank. But you were hiring a superintendent of schools, and that's what's different. And that's why I was wondering about that.
Yeah, the search experience category, and I would be happy to provide the more detailed rubric that went along with this scoring matrix. I believe that search experience included that, and I can certainly provide that to you. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Larson.
Thank you, Speaker or Chairman. I'm curious, what was his total time of employment?
From 2023 until September 26th, 2025.
So there was probably a lot of interaction and engagement with him. Is that correct? As a board?
We interacted at the board table.
So I'm curious, you said that you were blindsided. I'm not sure if that's exactly what you said, but there were no red flags ever? Like you never looked on Facebook or LinkedIn or anything on his, a lot of times I'll just hear a name and I'll Google search, like, who is that? What are they about? Nothing like that occurred.
There were no red flags, no. The board did engage in a great deal of searching at the time of hiring, and there was nothing that indicated any sort of red flags, or there was no indication of any concerns with his ability to work in the United States or his citizenship.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Levin.
Thank you, Chair, for recognition. I want to thank you all for joining us here today, particularly in light of the fact that the constituency that you serve far exceeds that of any of the sitting members of this committee. In fact, I believe you serve over 30,000 students, and that does not even take into account the parents and families who are not directly under your supervision every day, and I want to thank you for that work. I also note that among the committeeship of this room, very few of us are your constituents. And so you are directly answerable to those constituents, and your decision to come here and join us today and provide us with these answers is incredibly gracious, and I want to recognize that. My question really goes to the fact that Des Moines Public Schools serves a unique constituency amongst the states, amongst this state, right? We do not have any similar school districts in Iowa. And so I'm curious, what are some of the things that you've been able to do in the time since September to look at resources available to districts similar to yours to ensure that going forward, we have clarity and that you all have the servants that you need at the table?
Just want to make sure that I'm answering your question. The question is, what are we doing around looking at other school districts around just resources and opportunities for Des Moines Public Schools to advance their services for students and families?
Yeah, and I guess to be more blunt, are there things that we here as the legislature need to provide to you because of the new unique position that you are in? Do you have the resources that you need in order to make sure that your superintendent going forward, that your full staffing for Des Moines Public Schools serving so many of our amazing students in this state are well served?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. I guess I can keep my comments maybe as brief as possible, just recognizing the time here. But supplemental state aid that would allow us to resource our students with the staff and with the facilities necessary to give them the highest quality of learning and educational environments possible. Advancement in preschool legislation that would allow our students to engage in preschool, high-quality preschool at 4 years old, fully funded. For every dollar spent on preschool, $17 is a return investment on that for our economy. And so it pays dividends beyond just the preschool experience. I would offer that up. That those are things that we continue to leverage in our own school district to partner with. We've got public and private partnerships all over the city. We have well over 100 partners where we provide everything from preschool services to tutoring to mentoring across our city. We've got work-based learning opportunities for our students, and we want to continue to advance that. I know there's some potential legislation regarding work-based learning that may even hit the floor today in some subcommittees. We would love for that opportunity to be extended to Des Moines Public Schools and, of course, our colleagues in the metro and across the state. Work-based learning is an opportunity for students to get their hands on experiential learning while also getting high school credit courses. And so when they graduate, they're not just graduating with a diploma, they're graduating with confidence and competence in a career pathway of their choice. So I would offer all of those particular aspects. And I really can't thank you enough for the question.
Chair recognizes Representative Mattson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. And I'm sure we're running a little bit tight on time, so I'll be brief. I really just wanted to, couple things, echo Representative Levin's comments about your graciousness in being here today and being so candid about the entire process. And it is, to me at least, very clear that DMPS has put a lot of time and energy into doing the most thorough review possible. And I, for one, am incredibly grateful for it. And I think everyone should be. Appreciate your time and attention, not just to the review, but also your plans moving forward. So thank you for that. I also want to acknowledge that I think what many of us in this room know is that DMPS is incredibly blessed with diversity in your families, your students, your staff, and I, for one, really appreciate your commitment to your community. So thank you again for that. I think it's also important that we do more than just look back on what has happened, but look forward. And on that note, especially as Iowa's largest school district, could you share an update on DMPS's Reimagining Education Plan now that that bond referendum passed with such flying colors?
Yes, thank you so much. To be exact, 74% approval on November 4th. So we are well underway with the execution of the Reimagine Education Plan, which includes creating 3 regions in Des Moines Public Schools, a northeast, northwest, and a south region. Each region would have a signature program associated with that. 2 of those regions would have a STEM program, a STEAM, that would offer students more access and immersive experiences in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and technology. Another region would offer business applications. We would also look to create and advance career and technical education at all of our middle schools and all of our high schools in Des Moines Public Schools. Again, giving students that career exploratory opportunity to get their hands dirty, to get their hands wet, and those real world experiences and state-of-the-art environments. So again, advancing work-based learning opportunities for students. We're also looking to create in the heart of Des Moines Public Schools and of our city at Moulton Elementary School, at pre-K through 8, find a performing arts center that would draw students from all over the district, all over the region. So we're really excited about that. We're also going to advance more Montessori programming in Des Moines in each of our regions. Currently, Montessori, Coles Montessori on the northwest side, it is a pre-K through 8 facility. It has the number 2 ranked middle school in the state of Iowa. And so we're looking to advance some more of that curriculum and instruction across the district to give more families more access. We look to break ground actually this summer in some of our construction efforts.
Chair recognizes Representative Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the second time. Can you tell me how much you paid JG Consulting Firm for this, and how much you paid Ian Roberts for the years that he worked for the Des Moines Public School System?
Our contract with JG Consulting was $40,000, and the superintendent's salary, it was different each year. For the 23-24 school year was $270,000, and his base salary increased in subsequent years to $279,450 and $286,716.
So we're talking over $1 million here. Or close to it. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Ramirez.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I want to echo my thanks for you all coming here and sharing transparently about the independent investigation. I first want to know, I'm so glad to hear that my fellow representatives are expressing concern of allowing educators carrying weapons on our education campuses. Considering that that's been something that's been trying to be advocated for, in fact, by this body for numerous years. I'd also like to express that, sometimes diversity, equity, inclusion, in my opinion, can be used as a fear-mongering tactic. So I just want to give an opportunity to listen to see what does diversity actually mean when it comes to your student population. So if you wouldn't mind, if you have the data in front of you of the demographic breakdown of students with disabilities, students below the poverty line, and non-white versus white students in your population. Thank you.
I don't know that we have the exact populations, but pretty close.
Yeah, I can give you maybe some approximates, but we can certainly follow up with the current statistics. Students with disability, students with IEPs is about 15% of the population. Students who are English language learners, about 25%, so 1 in 4 students. Students that identify as white is about don't quote me on this. I want to say it's probably around 40%. And so students of color obviously would be 60% after that. So the specific breakdown of students identify as Black or Latinx or Asian, Pacific Islander, I'd have to follow up with you to get more specifics.
Our free and reduced meal population is at
76% for free and reduced price lunch.
You may follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just as a clarification, when you were searching for a search firm to be able to, and also a superintendent that has a commitment to diversity and equity and inclusion, is it fair to say you were really searching for a candidate that would adequately represent these populations, students with disabilities, students on IEPs, et cetera?
Absolutely. Each student has very unique needs that we serve, and each district has very unique needs across the state. So we were looking specifically for a candidate that would be able to improve outcomes for the specific population that we serve.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Hora.
Yeah, thank you for being here today. I just have a question around the Morgan State. Is it Morgan
State University.
Morgan State University? When was there an indication that that was likely false? That he had gotten a degree from there?
Not until after his detainment on September 26th.
Okay.
So when you are advancing your degree to get your doctoral degree, oftentimes you complete your coursework first, and then during the time in which, after you complete your coursework until the time you've written and defended your dissertation, you can write ABD on your resume or all but dissertation on your resume. And that is what we saw on the resume that was handed to us and what was confirmed in the checks.
And you just relied on them to check the references, right? You guys never checked to see if he actually had degrees from any of those places?
We received transcripts.
Chair recognizes Representative Gosa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, thank you all for being here. I sat on that hot seat, not in front of this committee, but all the time over the Department of Ed when I took over school board. And going through a superintendent search, it is very frustrating using the consultant firms. We wound up hiring a superintendent, didn't even have a license, couldn't get a license in the state of Iowa. So it is very frustrating. I want to commend you on doing the E-Verify, because that's something we don't even require in the state. I don't think a lot of people know that, but anybody could be working on any facility, building, or anything, and we don't require that. So I hope that's something you look into doing as well, because, you know, we have to keep our kids safe. I do want to applaud you for sitting in the hot seat, taking ownership, and coming up with a corrective action plan on how you're going to move forward. That's one of the biggest things, is taking accountability and ownership, and then coming up with a game plan on how you're doing that. Sometimes it's very costly mistakes, and a lot of us make those in our lives, or our kids do too. But again, the consulting process just irritates me to no end, and I could go on about that forever because it cost us a lot of money and a lot of headaches, and they don't vet people. And I think there's some parameters that need to be put in that, and maybe it's a framework that we do at this level to put that in, and this is what you have to use and your guidelines, so then we're just as accountable too when we're grilling you on things. So I just wanted to throw that out there because I've been a part of that process. At one point, we went through 3 different superintendents. So it is extremely frustrating. I commend you on that. And again, I want to throw that out there. We do not require in this state E-Verify on anybody that works on any project in this state. So just remember that.
Chair recognizes Representative Shipley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the second time. First, I just want to address what Representative Ramirez alluded to, that people were expressing concern about weapons in school. I think the larger concern is that you have the leader of the largest school district in the state completely ignoring state law, committing a felony every single day. If we can't expect the top school district to obey state law, what does that say about the whole institution of education? It's incredibly, again, I think it's just a betrayal about the laws and the government that we have. And like I said, my recommendation was, let's delete 724-4B, because if we can't even get our superintendents to follow it, why would we throw other people in jail for those sorts of things? So just wanted to clarify where I was coming from, that line of questioning. You can ask the chair. So I want to observe, it seems like in the last couple of years, the district actually made some gradual improvements under Ian Roberts. Have you guys assessed that much in terms of how your overall district performed under his leadership?
Yes, we are currently meeting our goals and guardrails that the board has set forth. There have been several improvements made.
So he performed relatively well for his position?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to share that observation because I noticed it, and I don't know if that speaks well to him as a criminal illegal, or just a lot about Dr. Thomas Earhart and how poor of a job he did for the district. But I certainly noticed that, and I hope whoever leads the district again can continue the positive trajectory there. One last thing that did come up in the news is Ian Roberts had his own consulting firm, and that perhaps he had requested the board to pay contracts to his own firm in regard to cultural sensitivity trainings and things of that nature. Can you provide an update on that?
The board did not receive or approve any contracts with a consulting firm that the previous superintendent was a part of. This is one of the reasons why we've engaged in a re-audit with the state auditor's office. That auditor, or the re-audit is reviewing contracts, hiring, a multitude of things to ensure and to see what, to ensure that we are headed in the right direction and uncover anything.
So the board didn't approve contracts, but did Ian Roberts request contracts?
That's what we're hoping to uncover with the audit, not that we're aware of currently, but that's why we
So
requested.
it's a
the
possibility and we're
re-audit.
looking into it.
Yes.
This might not be the best question for you guys, but, so he was an IPERS employee, correct?
Yes.
Now, it's because he admitted to committing fraud, does he forfeit his IPERS savings? Do you know anything how that works, or
I don't know.
question for a different committee? Okay, something to keep an eye on. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Well, we're getting close to the time, so I want to finish up with a couple of questions. Going back to my original line of thinking, you guys run your employees through E-Verify or Save. You find out you have some that are not eligible to work. What do you intend to do at that point?
If employees are not eligible to work, then they will no longer be employed at DMPS.
And if ICE requests anything from you guys, how do you intend to handle it? What is the stance of of Des Moines Public Schools when it comes to working with ICE?
We comply with all law enforcement. What we do is we check and verify IDs. We check documentation, which includes maybe it's court order or a judicial warrant. We ask for copies of those so that we can verify to make sure that what we're complying with is indeed a legal document.
So you intend to work with ICE. So we're not going to see an article or something come out that ICE requests information from you guys, or requests to potentially even show up, and you guys just stiff them.
I can tell you that our policy is that as long as we've got proper credentials and we've got copies and documents of warrants, judicial warrants and court orders, we will comply.
Okay. To finish this up, I think you guys need to take some responsibility. Are you willing today to say, yes, we bear some responsibility for what has happened?
Yes. We bear some responsibility.
Thank you guys for coming, Matt. Best of luck to you. We do want to see you guys be successful. You got your hands full. Certainly appreciate you stepping into that role. It's not going to be an easy thing for you, but I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys for coming. For the committee, we will come back after the conclusion of the 2:30 blocks and get some food because you're going to be here for a bit. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.